I got back from deployment on a Thursday. 11 months out at sea, working 18-hour days, breathing engine oil and salt air. You'd think coming home would feel like peace. It didn't. The house in Boise looked exactly the same chipped paint on the porch, same crooked screen door. My dad waved from the driveway like nothing ever changed. Jessica didn't come outside. That wasn't surprising. She was probably inside doing her usual making half-baked content in the living room I paid for on a ring light. I also paid for using a phone I helped replace last fall when she accidentally dropped it into a pool at a retreat she swore was business-related. You know the usual path to becoming a brand ambassador for some overpriced teeth-whitening strips. I walked into the house and could already smell that faint mix of microwave pizza and overpriced face masks. No hugs, no real welcome home. My dad muttered something about traffic, then asked if I had time to look at the water heater. Jessica shouted from her room that she was on a call. Cool. Glad to be home. I set my bag down and went into the kitchen. The fridge was full. Of course, it was my automatic transfers made sure of that. I've been covering half the household bills since Mom passed, thinking I was stepping up as the dependable one. That's what they called me. Lauren, she's the responsible one. The one who wears a uniform. Funny how responsibility turns into obligation when you're the only person in the room who takes anything seriously. I grabbed a soda and sat down at the kitchen table, the one we used to eat around like a real family. The silence wasn't comforting. It was stiff, like everyone was waiting for me to fix something they hadn't mentioned yet. The next day, Dad asked if I could take a look at Jessica's car. Her battery had been dying for weeks. I asked why she didn't mention it. He shrugged. You were busy serving the country. That passive-aggressive guilt trip's still alive and well. Jessica finally emerged around noon, wearing some kind of velvet tracksuit that looked like it belonged to a washed-up pop star. She gave me a half smile and said I was going to come out yesterday, but I had like 5 brand calls. Super booked. I didn't reply. She didn't notice. That night, I couldn't sleep. My old room was still technically mine, but half of it had been converted into Jessica's yoga video backdrop. There was a full-length mirror I didn't recognize, and a set of string lights shaped like moons. The closet still had some of my old uniforms in it, neatly bagged, untouched. I laid there, staring at the ceiling, thinking about how strange it all felt. Like I'd stepped into a version of my house where I was just a guest, an ATM in boots. You ever get that gut feeling that something's off? Even if nothing's happening in front of you, that itch you can't scratch, that was me lying there, while the hallway light flickered every time the AC kicked on. Around 2 a.m., I remembered that I'd set up a new security camera last time I visited, just a little smart camera in the kitchen. Not for spying. For safety. The front door didn't always latch right, and the neighborhood wasn't as quiet as it used to be. Plus, with Jessica accidentally leaving the stove on twice, I figured it wouldn't hurt. I pulled up the app on my phone just to see if it was still working. It was. Motion had been detected earlier that afternoon. I tapped play. I wasn't expecting anything dramatic. Maybe Dad grabbing a beer, or Jessica microwaving something soggy and gluten-free. Instead, I saw Jessica standing in the kitchen on a call with someone. She was pacing, laughing. No, she's back. Yeah. That dumb Navy girl is back for her hero tour. God, she thinks she's so important. Like, okay, Lauren, save the world, but can you Venmo me for groceries again? She laughed so hard she nearly dropped her phone. No, but seriously, she's just government muscle with a paycheck. She doesn't get it. I'm building a brand. I didn't blink, I didn't breathe. She kept going. I mean, she should be grateful we even let her stay here. Like, hello, this is my house now. I paused the video. Let that line hit. She should be grateful we let her stay here. The house my mom bought. The house I saved from foreclosure after Dad lost his business and begged me to co-sign a refinance. The house I've been paying property tax on for the last 4 years. I put the phone down and stared at the ceiling again, this time, with that kind of dead calm you only get after realizing the people closest to you have absolutely no idea who you really are. Or worse, they know exactly who you are, and they think it's funny. If you've ever had a moment like that, where someone shows you how little they think of your worth, leave a comment below. I want to know how many of us are out here pretending things are fine just to keep the peace. And if you haven't already hit that subscribe button, You're gonna want to stick around for this one. I didn't say anything the next morning. I didn't bring it up. I made coffee like usual, watched Jessica film her Sunday routine in the bathroom mirror while I paid for the hot water. I nodded along when Dad complained about the price of gas while using my car to go run errands, but I opened my banking app that night, and for the first time in 5 years, I stared at the scheduled transfer to their joint account and hovered over the cancel button. I didn't hit cancel, not yet. I just stared at the button like it might blink first. The number was still there, $3,400, set to go out at midnight like it had every month for the last 5 years. Quiet, reliable, automatic, like me. The sound of Jessica's laughter from the night before kept echoing in the back of my mind. She should be grateful we even let her stay here. Stay here? I owned half the roof over her head. More than half if we're counting the part where Dad stopped paying property tax in 2019. I closed the app. Not because I changed my mind, but because I needed to breathe. I needed clarity. I wasn't going to stop the transfer just because I was mad. That's what they would expect, some emotional reaction they could spin into me being dramatic, unstable, or worse, ungrateful. No. If I was going to stop sending money, I needed proof. Not for them, for me. The next morning, I left early before anyone woke up. I told Dad I had errands. He didn't ask questions. That's how it always was, silence in place of accountability. Nobody in that house ever asked why, just whether the payment cleared. I drove to the nearest coffee shop with halfway decent Wi-Fi, ordered the cheapest thing on the menu, and pulled out my laptop. I logged into the bank that handled the old refinance on the house, the one I co-signed to save the family. It took me a second to remember the access credentials. I hadn't looked at this account in over a year. Why would I trusted them. Big mistake. I found the loan under my name, and Dad's pulled up the transaction history. And there it was, a lump sum payoff dated 8 months ago, October, just sitting there clear as day. Loan paid in full, it said. Like it was no big deal. Like I hadn't spent the last 8 months sending over $3,000 every 30 days for a debt that didn't exist. I clicked to view the payoff source. It was traced back to a sale asset liquidation. Property code vehicle. One I recognized. The damn car. Dad's old restored '69 Cutlass. The same one he told me was a sentimental piece he couldn't part with, even when we were supposedly weeks from foreclosure. The one that belonged to Mom before she got sick, her pride and joy. He'd sold it. Not only had he sold it, he'd used it to pay off the debt without telling me, and then let me keep sending payments as if nothing changed. I don't know how long I sat there staring at that screen. Probably 20 minutes, maybe 30. I wasn't angry yet. Not the kind of anger that comes out as yelling or slamming things. No. I was angry like a steel wire. Pulled tight, silent, sharp, dangerous. I opened a spreadsheet. It sounds stupid, but I needed to see it in front of me. I went month by month. 8 months. $3, $400 each. $27,200. $27,000. Jessica's little content, retreats, the new couch in the living room, the random Amazon packages that always showed up. It all made sense now. They weren't surviving. They were thriving off me. I opened the camera app again. I needed to hear it one more time, not to torture myself, but to confirm. Jessica was in the kitchen again that afternoon, pacing with her phone. I don't know why she still sends it. She's like trained or something. It's hilarious. Trained, like a dog. She laughed again and added, I mean, maybe it's guilt. She got the uniform, I got the personality. I paused the video. There it was. The whole family playbook summarized in 10 seconds. I was the guilt sponge. The fixer. The one who owed them for turning out okay. I'd spent my 20s working 18-hour days at sea, eating powdered eggs, getting passed over for promotions, because I was too busy wiring home money to deal with extra qualifications. And for what? So Jessica could buy LED mirrors and monologue to her ring light about manifesting abundance. I clicked Save Video, uploaded it to a new folder on my desktop called The Ledger, and dropped the spreadsheet in next to it. I didn't say anything when I got home. I didn't slam doors or call anyone out. That's the part that people don't understand. Real betrayal doesn't explode, it festers. Quietly. While everyone around you acts like everything's fine. Jessica was back in the living room recording her weekly life update. Dad was watching cable news with the volume too high. The dog, which I also paid for, was chewing a slipper by the front door. I went into the kitchen, opened the fridge, and took out a bottle of water. That fridge bought on my credit. Same with the washer and dryer. I once used my deployment bonus to replace the hot water heater after Dad forgot to renew the home insurance. I walked past Jessica, who was mid-sentence about how gratitude is the key to a full life, and went to my room. Closed the door, locked it. Then I sat down, opened my laptop again, and pulled up the banking app. The transfer was still there, still pending. I moved the cursor. My finger hovered over the button for a moment. Not out of doubt, just habit. Then I clicked cancel. The green transfer canceled banner disappeared a second later, like nothing had happened. Just a clean, quiet break. No fireworks, no alarms, no screaming relatives kicking in my door. Just done. It was the first time in 5 years that my money wasn't on its way to them. I didn't even feel guilty. I thought I would. I waited for it. Nothing came. What did come was clarity. I'd been sending money for a loan that no longer existed. That wasn't a misunderstanding. That wasn't a miscommunication. That was a lie maintained month after month, backed by silence, and padded by my own blind sense of duty. And it wasn't just a lie, they made it profitable. I sat back in my chair, opened to send my email, and pulled up the last few messages from my dad. The last 3 months he'd sent short one-liners like, "Thanks, kid," or "Came through again," usually followed by a passive-aggressive complaint about the rising cost of groceries or gas. Once he asked if I could bump it to $4,000 this month, because Jessica had an unexpected dental issue. I had said yes, without hesitation, like an idiot. I opened my calculator and added the extra payments. $32,000 total, since the debt was already gone. I'd been sending over $1,000 a week to people who thought I was a punchline. I didn't start crying. I didn't punch a wall. I went for a walk. It was late. Boise isn't exactly buzzing at night, but I didn't need excitement. I needed air. I walked around the block passing the same neighbors who waved at us every Christmas, the same houses with the same porch lights, and same little flagpoles, and same lawn signs about voting and dogs. I thought about my mom. She was the only one in the family who didn't treat my service like some inconvenient absence. She sent care packages. She handwrote letters. When I graduated boot camp, she flew across the country with a broken ankle just to watch me stand in formation. She was also the one who bought this house. Not my dad, not me. Her. She worked 2 jobs to get the down payment. She made it a home. She painted the kitchen walls herself and cried when she got the dishwasher installed because she never thought she'd own one. She was gone now. Cancer took her fast. Jessica cried louder than anyone at the funeral, but I was the one who held the mortgage together when Dad's business venture fell apart, and the bank came knocking. Jessica had just dropped out of her second try at community college. She said it was a sign that school wasn't for her. Dad said it was just a phase. I said I'd co-sign the refinance. Biggest mistake of my life. The documents came back to me in the mail a month later, stack of paper signatures payment plan. It had my name and his on it, and I remember telling myself, this is what good daughters do. I'd repeated that phrase in my head like gospel every month since. I circled the block and came back to the house, standing for a minute on the lawn. Jessica's window was lit up. She was probably editing videos about letting go of toxic energy while holding a smoothie I paid for. I went inside. No one noticed I'd left. Dad was asleep in his recliner with a beer can half crushed on his chest. The TV was playing a rerun of Something Loud. Jessica was on FaceTime in the hallway, talking about someone named Tyler and how he just doesn't get it. I stepped over the dog and went back into my room. Locked the door again. My laptop was still open. I clicked into the loan portal again and pulled up the documents. There it was, plain and simple, loan paid in full. October 8th. Payment source asset sale. Description vehicle title transfer. I opened a notes app and started typing. Nothing poetic, just facts. Timeline. Amounts. Transfers. I opened a new folder and named it Proof. Dropped the video file in. Dropped the screenshot. Dropped the spreadsheet. I labeled each one like I was prepping for court. Not because I planned to sue them, but because something about seeing the truth lined up in cold clinical order made it real. I thought about how many times I'd eaten cup noodles at base to save a few bucks, or skipped taking leave because flights were too expensive. Meanwhile, Jessica was flying to LA for networking brunches and filming herself packing with captions like, "So blessed." I clicked into her Instagram. There it was. A post from November, just a few weeks after the loan had been paid off. She was posing on a balcony with a view of the beach and some overpriced acai bowl. The caption read, "Work hard, manifest harder. Dutch hustle life. Work hard." I closed the tab before I could throw something. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd spent a decade taking orders, sleeping in bunks smaller than a coffin, hauling equipment in heat waves and sandstorms, just so my family could have a fridge full of oat milk and a high-speed Wi-Fi connection. I wasn't mad that they'd been comfortable. I was mad they lied to me to stay that way. They didn't ask for help, they built a lifestyle around it. There's a difference between supporting your family and being their financial plan. I finally saw it. I opened my banking app one more time and changed the payment settings from recurring to manual only. Just a small checkbox, but that one click felt like removing a shackle. The next morning, I took the dog out. Not because anyone asked me to, but because the poor thing was scratching at the door and everyone else was too busy pretending to be asleep. Typical. As I stood on the porch, watching him sniff the same patch of grass he always did, I looked over at the house again. This wasn't just a house. It was the last thing tying me to any version of family that felt real. And it hit me, this place wasn't mine anymore. Not emotionally, not spiritually, just legally and barely. The title still had both my dad's and my name on it, even though I hadn't lived here in years. I pulled up the property records right there on my phone. The county website confirmed it co-ownership, active mortgage, no liens. But it also showed something I hadn't seen before, a transfer of partial equity, last November. I dug into the documents. Jessica was now listed as a partial beneficiary. He'd done it. My dad had signed over part of the house to her after the debt was paid after the car was sold, and while I was still wiring them money every month. I laughed out loud, standing there, in my uniform sweatpants and an old navy hoodie, looking like someone who just realized they'd been conned by their own blood. Inside, I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table. Jessica came in like she hadn't been caught on camera calling me a dumb Navy girl less than 48 hours ago. She poured almond milk into a smoothie blender, then turned to me and said, "Hey, can I ask a favor?" I didn't look up. "That depends. Is it a real favor or one of your influencer emergencies?" She blinked, fake offended. "Wow. Okay. I was just gonna ask if you could spot me for this online course I found. It's like for creators and the deadlines today." I didn't flinch. "Ask Dad." She rolled her eyes and started listing reasons why he wouldn't get it. I took a sip of coffee and stared right through her. She kept talking like I wasn't even in the room, like this was just another routine where I eventually gave in. But I didn't give in. I stood up, grabbed my mug, and walked out without saying a word. Back in my room, I pulled up every email and message related to the mortgage, the old loan, and the car title. The bill of sale for the Cutlass was in my dad's inbox, which I had access to, because he once begged me to help him reset his login and never changed the password. Classic move. I downloaded the document. It wasn't just a shady private sale. It was through a collector in California. Market value listed $24,500, which matched the payoff amount on the loan down to the dollar. So not only had he sold the car to pay the loan, he timed it perfectly, then never told me, and kept taking my money like nothing happened. The kicker. He forwarded the confirmation email to Jessica, not me. The subject line was handled. She won't know. I stared at that line for a while. She won't know. That was the plan. That was the whole strategy. Keep Lauren in the dark, keep the money flowing, and keep smiling like nothing's wrong. They didn't just forget to tell me the silence was intentional. A family con job. That's when it all clicked. Every time I tried to ask questions about the loan, Dad would get weirdly vague. Every time I visited Jessica was extra sweet for the first day, then suddenly needed something. And every time I mentioned budgeting, someone in the house would bring up Mom. They'd weaponized grief. That's what they were doing, using her memory like a guilt tax. I opened the folder on my laptop labeled Proof and added the forwarded email. Then I added the county records showing the equity transfer. I took screenshots of the payment breakdowns, the car sale, the timeline. I didn't organize it like a lawyer. I organized it like someone who finally had receipts. There was no aha moment, no movie scene montage with dramatic music. Just facts stacking up on top of each other until the weight of them made it impossible to pretend anymore. Dad wasn't confused. Jessica wasn't clueless. They were coordinated. Maybe not in an evil mastermind kind of way, but in the we like how this benefits us kind of way. And that's the thing with financial abuse. It doesn't always look like theft. Sometimes it looks like love dressed up as obligation. I took a break to make lunch. Jessica was already eating something from a takeout container, probably ordered on my Uber Eats account again. I didn't ask. She didn't offer. Dad came in from the garage, wiping his hands like he'd done actual work out there. "You have a minute?" he asked. I nodded. He sat down across from me and started talking about the lawnmower. Dead serious, the lawnmower. He wanted to know if I could chip in for a new one because the old one was starting to smoke. I didn't even respond. Just looked him in the eye and said, "How much did the collector give you for Mom's car?" That was the first time I saw him blink like he'd been slapped. He stammered, "Ooh, what car?" "Cutlass," I said. "California buyer." "October." I saw the invoice. He looked away. That was to take care of things. For the house, for you and your sister. I smiled, not kindly. "I've been taking care of things," I said. "You just decided to get a bonus." He didn't answer, didn't apologize, didn't even try to lie again. Just sat there quiet, like he'd been caught stealing from a church donation box. Jessica came in halfway through, looked at both of us, and asked, "Are we fighting or something?" I grabbed my plate and walked out. No, we weren't fighting. That would have meant they still had a say. I didn't bring it up again. I didn't need to. The silence did most of the talking. After that conversation in the kitchen, Dad avoided me like I was holding a subpoena. He left the house early the next day. Something about getting parts for the mower, even though we both knew damn well he wasn't fixing anything. Jessica, meanwhile, acted like nothing was happening. She floated through the day in slippers and a face mask, talking on speakerphone like she was running a media empire. When she did speak to me, it was either to ask if I had almond butter or to remind me that I was lucky to be on leave for a bit. I almost laughed. Leave? This wasn't vacation. This was reconnaissance. I had 2 days left before I had to return to base. I didn't want to waste them playing house with people who saw me as a paycheck. So I got in my car and drove. Not far, just to a park Mom used to take us when we were kids. There was a walking trail, a duck pond, and a bench we'd sit on while she read books and let Jessica climb trees barefoot. I hadn't been there in years. It was mostly the same, except quieter. I sat there with my phone in my hand, the proof folder open. The emails, the screenshots, the bank records, all of it staring back at me, like a report I didn't ask to write. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with it all. I didn't want to go nuclear. Not yet. But I also wasn't going to keep pretending everything was fine. That part of me was gone. I drove home a couple of hours later. When I walked in, Jessica was on the couch editing a video titled "How to Heal from Family Drama." The irony didn't even register to her. I walked past her straight to Dad's bedroom. The door was closed, which was rare. I knocked once and opened it. He was lying on the bed, TV on phone in hand. He looked up surprised. "You okay?" I sat on the edge of the bed and looked him dead in the eye. "Tell me the truth. How long were you planning to let me keep sending money?" He didn't answer right away. He just shifted uncomfortably, like someone stuck between guilt and ego. "I don't know," he finally said. "It helped." "Helped who?" He looked at the wall instead of me. "Everyone." "Not me." He exhaled through his nose like he was the one being inconvenienced. "You wouldn't have understood. Things got messy." Jess was struggling. "I didn't want you worrying about all that while you were deployed. So you decided lying was easier." "I didn't lie," he said quickly, like he'd been practicing it. "I just didn't update you." I stood up. "You mean you cashed checks every month and hoped I'd stay stupid?" "Don't talk to me like that," he snapped. I raised an eyebrow. "Like what?" "Like someone who's been paying your bills for half a decade while you sit on a paid-off house and play victim." He sat up. "It wasn't like that." "Then explain it to me. Break it down. Where did the money go after October? What was it used for?" He didn't speak. Not for a full 30 seconds. Then finally, he muttered groceries. "Utilities. some for Jess's business. Her business, I laughed. Posting detox tea and fake morning routines is a business now. She's trying, he said. No, I'm trying. She's freeloading. He looked away again. That was his go-to move. She's your sister, he said. You've always looked out for her. Yeah, I said flatly. That was my first mistake. He looked like he wanted to argue, but the words didn't come. Maybe because deep down, he knew I wasn't wrong. I left his room and went to mine, slammed the door harder than I meant to, and collapsed on the bed. It wasn't the yelling that wore me out. It was the realization that there was nothing left to fix. The damage wasn't new. It had been there for years. I just finally turned on the lights. I checked my phone. 2 unread texts from Jessica. The first, can you transfer $200 for a collab shoot this weekend? It's a really good opportunity. The second 2 minutes later. Also, can you pick up almond milk? I didn't reply. Instead, I opened a group chat labeled Family Updates. It was mostly dead, used for birthdays and holiday planning. I typed out a message, but I didn't send it. Not yet. Too soon. They weren't ready, but I was. I opened Instagram again, checked Jessica's page. New story, a boomerang of her iced coffee with the caption, grinding. Hashtag blessed. Hashtag content life. I closed the app and opened notes. At the top, I wrote what they took. Then I started listing everything line by line. Mortgage payments, utility bills, food expenses, phone upgrades, car repairs, emergency flights, one-time transfers, equipment for Jessica's business, holiday gifts, credit card interest, stress, time, sleep, sanity. By the time I finished, I had over 40 items. And one conclusion, they weren't my responsibility. They were my burden. One I didn't agree to carry. One they never planned to put down. I didn't say anything the next morning. No dramatic confrontation, no speeches. I was done performing daughter duties. Jessica noticed first. She asked if I was in a mood while waving a makeup brush around like a wand. I didn't answer. I didn't even look up. The silence made her uncomfortable, and that was new. Usually, she steamrolled conversations without noticing anyone was in the room. But this time, she hovered for a second, waiting. When she didn't get a reaction, she walked off muttering something about energy shifts. Dad was next. He came into the kitchen while I was making coffee and stood there like he was waiting for permission to speak. "You all right, kid?" he asked, using that fake soft tone that always came out when he needed something. "Fine," I said. He nodded like that settled it, even though we both knew it didn't. He opened the fridge, looked inside for a solid minute, and then asked, "You still planning to send that grocery money this week?" I sipped my coffee. No. He blinked like I'd just spoken a foreign language. "What?" I said no, I repeated. The loans paid off. "You're not getting another cent from me." He tried to laugh like it was a joke. "Come on, don't be like that. Things are tight." They weren't tight when you handed part of the house to Jessica. He didn't say anything, just closed the fridge door with a little too much force. I walked out before he could turn it into a guilt speech. I already knew the lines by heart anyway. That afternoon, the gaslighting started. Jessica cornered me in the hallway with a too-sweet smile. "Hey, I just want to make sure we're good. You've been super quiet." I raised an eyebrow. "We're fine." She leaned against the wall like she was about to deliver a TED Talk. "It just feels like you've been kinda off. And I know being deployed messes with your head, so I figured maybe it's like a reintegration thing." There it was. The twist. The casual dig wrapped in fake concern. If I didn't play nice, the narrative would become Lauren's unstable because of the Navy. I kept my tone flat. My head's fine. My tolerance isn't. Jessica frowned. "Wow." "Okay, I was just trying to help." Help would have been telling me the truth. She folded her arms. "This is why nobody talks to you about stuff. You always make it about being betrayed." I laughed once. "You literally betrayed me." "You're being dramatic." There it was, the golden phrase. A family classic. Used every time someone wanted to rewrite history without changing the facts. I walked past her without another word. Later that evening, Aunt Marlene called. I didn't pick up. She left a voicemail. "Hey, sweetie, I just heard you're upset. Jessica said something about you feeling used. I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding. Don't let stress from the Navy cloud your judgment." "Okay, we love you." I stared at the screen. Judgment, misunderstanding. They were already rewriting the script. If I pulled away, I wasn't setting a boundary, I was having a breakdown. If I stopped paying, I wasn't correcting an injustice, I was abandoning my family. That night, I sat in the garage, with the lights off, just listening to the quiet hum of nothing. I used to come out here when I was a teenager, just to get space. It smelled the same old paint rust, a bit of gasoline. The only place in the house that hadn't been remodeled with my money. I opened my phone and went to the proof folder again. Everything was still there, cold, unchangeable evidence. And yet somehow, I was still the one being painted as unstable. That's the thing about emotional manipulation. It doesn't require yelling or threats. Sometimes it's just repeated enough that you just start to doubt your own math. The next morning, I left the house early, got in my car and drove to a diner on the edge of town. I needed coffee that didn't come with side-eye or silent judgment. While I sat at the counter scrolling through my emails, a new one came in from Dad. Subject, can we talk? The body of the email was just one line. I think you're overreacting. We're family. No apology, no acknowledgement. Just the assumption that if he called it a misunderstanding, I'd fold. I closed the email and flagged it. Not to respond, just to remind myself how low the bar had been set. By noon, Jessica had posted a selfie captioned, "People will try to bring you down when your light shines too bright. Let them squint." Comments full of heart emojis and "So true, queen." I laughed into my coffee. Let them squint. She was squatting in a house paid for by someone she publicly mocked, and now she was branding herself as the victim of toxic energy. I opened my notes app and added another item to the list under what they took. My silence. Because that's what this whole thing had depended on. Not just my money, but my silence. My ability to take the hits and smile through them. To be the bigger person, to fund the fantasy. But once you see the strings, the puppet show loses its magic. I didn't send the message right away. Not because I was hesitant, but because I wanted it to land like a hammer, not a warning. Everything I'd gathered was sitting in one folder. Screenshots, videos, bank records, voice memos. The email where Dad said she won't know. Jessica calling me the dumb Navy girl on a camera I installed and paid for. A trail of betrayal clear enough that even the most naive aunt in Florida couldn't spin it into a family misunderstanding. I opened the old family updates email thread. It was still there, still full of threads about Thanksgiving plans, church potlucks. And the time Jessica fake cried about losing her job at a frozen yogurt shop, she quit after 2 weeks. I clicked reply all. The cursor blinked. I typed without emotion, just facts. Hi everyone. I'm writing to formally end all financial support to Dad, Jessica, and this household. The mortgage loan was paid off in full 8 months ago from the sale of Mom's Cutlass. Despite this, I've continued sending $3,400 per month under the impression that the loan was still active. This money has been used for personal spending, vacations, equipment upgrades, not housing security. Then I attached the receipts, the documents, the proof, and finally I wrote one last line. Please do not contact me unless it's to discuss repayment. I hit send. No dramatic music. No phone ringing off the hook. Just silence. The kind of silence that vibrates because it's about to be broken. It took exactly 21 minutes. First came Aunt Lisa. Subject line, "Are you okay?" The email was a soft panic attack disguised as concern. "I'm sure there's been some kind of miscommunication. Your dad has always meant well. Maybe he just forgot to update you about the loan. And Jessica's just going through a tough time. She didn't mean what she said." I didn't reply. Then came Uncle Ray from Florida. Short and sharp, disgusting. "You deserve better." No punctuation. That man never liked Dad. The group chat lit up within the hour. Jessica, of course, went first. "Wow, so you just wanted to humiliate us publicly." "Great, that's real mature." Then, "You know what, Lauren? You've always been jealous. You think you're better than us because you joined the Navy. You're not. You're just bitter because you have no friends and no life." I didn't answer. The folder was the response. The truth didn't need a debate. Dad texted next. Just 2 words. "Call me." I stared at it, then deleted it. An hour later, I got an email from a lawyer. Not mine, theirs. Apparently, Dad had spoken to a friend who suggested he offer a payment plan to avoid any legal fallout. The email said they were prepared to repay the full amount, but only at a rate of $300 a month. I laughed, out loud. $32,000 stolen, and they wanted to pay it back like a gym membership. I replied, "Full repayment. 6 months. Liquidate assets. Sell the couch, sell the ring lights, sell the car. I don't care how. I want my money back or I file. I added, and don't insult me with a payment plan smaller than your cable bill. That night, Jessica posted a video on TikTok with the caption, "Sometimes your biggest hater lives under the same roof." I was tagged. Of course. It was her cry. Ing, with mascara running, holding a mug that said empathy. She talked about how some people weaponize money to control others and how she was surrounded by betrayal. The comments were full of sympathy. Her followers were eating it up, but I wasn't mad. That video was a gift. I downloaded it, added it to the folder. Proof of character. The next morning, I woke up to find that the family updates email thread had gone quiet. Not even Aunt Lisa had the nerve to follow up. I brewed coffee, poured it into my thermos, and walked out into the backyard. Same dead grass. Same broken fence. Same peeling paint on the patio. But the energy was different now. This wasn't my burden anymore. It was their consequence. I wasn't angry anymore. I was focused. I spent that morning reviewing state laws around family fraud, informal loans, civil claims. I wasn't trying to burn them to the ground. I was just making sure the fire stayed where it belonged. The best part. They had no idea how much I knew or how much I still had, because behind every happy family post was a paper trail, and I had the whole damn thing. I was halfway through meal prepping when the doorbell rang. I didn't need to check who it was. The pounding that followed told me everything. Dad doesn't knock like a visitor. He knocks like he owns things. And Jessica, she doesn't knock. She complains through the door until someone lets her in. I muted the stove and walked to the security panel. There they were, both of them on my porch, dressed like this was a casual visit. Jessica in an over-accessorized athleisure set, and Dad in that same worn jacket he puts on when he wants to look serious. I hit the intercom. "Lauren, open the door," Dad barked. "We're not doing this over email." I leaned into the mic. "You already did." Jessica stepped closer to the camera. "Seriously? You're going to act like we're strangers now." "You are strangers," I said. "Strangers don't usually lie to my face for 8 months." "We didn't lie," she snapped. Dad cut in. "Lauren, enough of the dramatics. We came here to talk like a family." "You mean after the public meltdown?" "After I caught you on video mocking me, and caught Dad skimming thousands out of my bank account, that kind of family." Jessica rolled her eyes, all exasperation, and no accountability. "You always twist things." "No, I just recorded them," she scoffed. "God, you are so—" I cut the intercom. They didn't leave. They buzzed again. Knocked. Knocked harder. Dad even shouted, "You owe us a conversation," like I was still enlisted under his command. I went back to the kitchen, stirred the pan like nothing was happening. The noise was background now, just static from a station I didn't listen to anymore. 10 minutes later, silence. I peeked through the blinds. They were still out there, arms folded, trying to look patient. It was pathetic. A text came in. From Dad, "Don't forget who paid for your first car." I laughed out loud. It was true, he had bought me that junky Honda when I was 17. It broke down every other week, but I drove it to and from my part-time jobs and eventually to the recruiting office. It was the same car I sold later to pay off the utility bills he forgot to mention while he was trying to launch his restaurant brand. That debt had been repaid in full, plus interest, plus dignity. Another knock, more aggressive. Jessica was now pacing the porch, clearly mid-rant. Probably auditioning her pain in case someone nearby had a phone out. Drama plays better with an audience. I pulled up the security app and hit the record button. She shouted, "She's seriously locking us out after everything we've done for her." Then Dad chimed in. "It's that military attitude. Makes you think you're better than everyone." I zoomed in on his face. He looked tired but not remorseful, just inconvenienced. They were here to collect, not to apologize, not to make amends, to collect. I let the video roll. After 15 more minutes of cold air and no attention, they finally gave up. Dad muttered something to Jessica, and she stomped toward the car. He took one last look at the camera, then followed her head low, like a man who couldn't quite believe the ATM had frozen on him. Once the driveway was empty, I stopped the recording, added it to the folder. It wasn't revenge. It was documentation. I wasn't going to tell people how they acted, I'd just show them. That night I slept like I hadn't in weeks. The weight was gone. No tension about the next wire transfer. No guilt about skipping a phone call. No pressure to pretend we were a healthy unit held together by blood and blind loyalty. They had come to my door like debt collectors, and I'd shut it in their face like a woman with boundaries. The next morning, my neighbor stopped me while I was bringing in groceries. She looked uncomfortable. "Hey, Lauren, were those your parents here yesterday?" "Dad and sister," I said. She hesitated. They were yelling outside for a while. I didn't want to intrude, but it looked intense. "Yeah," I said. "They thought I still belonged to them." She blinked. "You okay?" "Better than I've ever been." She nodded. "Good. You know you don't have to explain anything. Some people just don't deserve access." I smiled. A real one this time. Because she got it. Family isn't who shows up. It's who respects the door when it's closed. 3 days later, the first wire transfer hit my account $10,000 flat. No note, no apology, no explanation. Just a lump sum from a shared account I recognized immediately, Dad's and Jessica's. Or maybe just Jessica's now. I wasn't sure and didn't care. The name on the deposit didn't matter. The balance did. I stared at the number for a long time. Not because it shocked me, but because I had to double-check I wasn't imagining it. This was real. Actual money. A small piece of what they owed me. I didn't reply. No thanks, no acknowledgement. I simply took a screenshot and dropped it into the folder labeled Repayments. 12 hours later, Jessica emailed me. Subject: Let's talk. The message was 4 paragraphs of her trying to sound like a mature adult. Something about how things got out of hand and this situation spiraled. And Dad's not perfect, but he means well. She even threw in a line about how I was always the strong one, and she looked up to me more than I knew. I read it twice, not because it moved me, but because it was so performative. I wanted to make sure I hadn't missed any sarcasm. At the end, she wrote, "Maybe once this is behind us, we can meet for lunch on me." Cute. I forwarded the email to myself, titled the copy Emotional Leverage Attempt #1, and then saved it. Then I muted her inbox. I didn't care if she thought we were rebuilding a relationship. I wasn't interested in redemption arcs. This wasn't a family sitcom. This was a spreadsheet with numbers, dates, and lies. And the balance was still short. I called their lawyer. A different one had taken over. This one sounded younger, sharper, more nervous. He said, "Ms. Langston, I just wanted to confirm that the initial $10,000 payment has been received. My clients would like to propose an extended repayment period due to some liquidity issues." "No," I said. 6 months. That was the deal. "Yes, of course, we understand. It's just that—" "I don't care what the just is," I said flatly. They committed fraud. I didn't press charges. I gave them a deadline. They either meet it or we escalate. Silence. Then understood. I hung up. That was the difference between me now and me 6 months ago. Back then, I would have felt guilty for being too direct. I would have worried about hurting their feelings. I might have even offered to lower the monthly repayment just to keep the peace. Now I was done paying for peace I never actually received. The second transfer came 2 weeks later. Another $7,000. Smaller, probably scraped together from selling something they actually liked. Maybe the leather couch Jessica used in her fake morning routine videos. Maybe Dad's whiskey collection. Who knows? I didn't ask. I didn't want to know. I only wanted the number to hit 32,000. That was it. No drama, no closure. Just reimbursement. They made 4 more payments over the next 5 weeks. Uneven amounts, one was $4,800, one was just under $2,000. Each one came with silence. Not a single word from Dad, not a call, not a text, not even one of those guilt-trip voicemails where he reminded me about family being everything. I figured Jessica finally convinced him to shut up and pay up before I took the whole thing public. By the 5th payment, I'd already opened a new savings account. I named it the Freedom Fund, not to be poetic, but to be specific. That money had been stolen from me. Now it would work for me. I started looking at culinary programs in Europe. Paris, Rome, Lyon. I'd talked about it for years, always putting it off because the family needed help. Not anymore. That final transfer came on a Thursday. $200 even. Exactly what was left. I stared at it for a full minute. Then I logged in, confirmed the balance, and closed the browser. No celebration, no dance party, just a slow exhale. The debt was gone. Not just the money, but the illusion. The one where I was the glue, the fixer, the martyr holding everyone together. I had believed that lie for too long, sacrificed for it, starved for it, served it like it was a virtue. But a truth that costs your sanity isn't a truth, it's a scam. And I wasn't playing anymore. I pulled out my old notebook, the one I used when I first joined the Navy. Inside was a list titled, "Things I'll Do When I Finally Have My Own Life." I hadn't opened it in years. At the top was 1. Take a real vacation, alone. Below that, 2. Live somewhere with silence that doesn't hurt. I smiled. That silence wasn't painful now. It was peace, and for once it was mine. I didn't block their numbers. I didn't post a long message about removing toxic people. I didn't hold some dramatic ceremony where I cut ties with my past. I just stopped answering. It was quieter that way, cleaner. No closure to perform, no emotional tiptoeing, just space. After the final payment cleared, the silence between us grew naturally, like a room finally emptying after years of being too crowded. Jessica posted less for a while. No more cryptic quotes about being betrayed by those you love. No tears on camera. Just travel throwbacks and half-hearted product links. She knew she couldn't spin it anymore, not with half the family, now aware that her vacations were funded with stolen money. Aunt Lisa called once, left a voicemail saying she hoped things could be mended. I didn't return the call. Because things weren't broken, they were revealed. There's a difference. Most people confuse discomfort with damage. But sometimes the thing that feels like pain is actually truth pulling off the mask. Dad tried a few more times, short emails, subject lines like, "We should talk" or "Let's move forward." But there was never an apology in the body of those messages. Just vague appeals to family, and how your mother wouldn't want this. That part made me laugh every time. Because Mom was the one person who never made me feel like love came with a receipt. She was gone long before the debt started, but I remember exactly how she treated people gently, clearly, without strings. So no, this wasn't a betrayal of her memory. If anything, it was the first time I honored it properly. The Freedom Fund sat untouched in a high-yield account for the first month. I didn't rush to spend it. That money had too much history attached to blow on impulse. It needed a purpose. So I started planning, not just a trip, a life change. I applied for a 6-month culinary intensive in Paris. Not just because it was in Paris, though, let's be honest, that helped, but because it was mine. My choice. My investment. No one else's fingerprints on it. I didn't ask permission. I didn't tell anyone, not even my closest friends, until the paperwork was final, and the deposit was paid. It felt like freedom. Not fireworks or confetti. Just clean air. Like walking out of a room you didn't realize was suffocating you. When I told my CO that I'd be taking leave at the end of the quarter for the program, he raised an eyebrow and said, "You finally doing something for yourself?" I smiled. "Yeah, about time, right?" He nodded. "Damn right." That conversation stuck with me. Not because of what he said, but because of what I didn't have to explain. He got it. Some people do. And the ones who don't, they're the ones who think a daughter is just a safety net in uniform. A walking credit card with a sense of duty so deep you forget it has a bottom. When I left for Paris, I didn't tell Dad. I didn't leave a key with Jessica. I just turned off the lights in my apartment, packed my bags, and locked the door behind me. And for the first time, it felt like my door. Not something I kept open just in case they needed something. Not something I left cracked out of guilt. Mine. Fully, finally, mine. I landed in France on a cool morning, jet-lagged and wide-eyed, standing outside a stone building that smelled like bread and lavender. I walked into the kitchen classroom, shook hands with strangers who didn't know a single thing about my past, and slipped on a white apron that felt lighter than anything I'd worn in years. Not because it was made of cotton, but because it came without expectation. In that first week, I learned to make pain au chocolat from scratch. My instructor was strict, hilarious, and didn't care where I came from, only whether I could follow the technique. It was perfect. At night, I'd sit in my tiny rental legs, sore from standing sipping tea and reading cookbooks like novels. No one asking for money. No passive-aggressive texts. No doorbells I was afraid to answer. Just peace, not the kind you have to buy. The kind you make yourself. I still got the occasional email. Mostly promotional junk, but sometimes a stray message from home. I didn't read them. Not out of spite, but because I no longer needed the story they were trying to sell. I wasn't the villain. I wasn't the savior either. I was just someone who finally decided the weight wasn't hers to carry anymore. People ask what it's like to walk away from your family. I tell them it's not walking away, it's walking toward yourself. I didn't burn a bridge. They handed me the matches, and I decided not to keep living in smoke. Now I live by one rule: just because someone shares your blood doesn't mean they get a blank check to your peace. I earned my freedom financially, emotionally, and personally, and I don't owe anyone a damn refund. Thanks for sticking with me through this story. If you're into real family drama revenge stories, or stories from military women who've had enough, this is your place. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what comes next. Your support means more than you know.